Good morning, everyone.
Good
Our,
morning.
good morning. Thank you for joining us. So,
Thank you.
let's do a little bit of housekeeping this morning. Welcome to Coffee Chat, Changes to Training and Regulation Part 3. Um, what, as you're seeing lots of different people this morning, welcome. Happy New Year. You guys are welcome to keep your cameras on, but we would ask that you would keep yourself muted. So our chat will be open this morning. I'll be there in the chat engaging with you. I'll make sure that questions that we are receiving in the chat get to our host, Ashley Cervantes Thomas. And then but most of you, well, I shouldn't say most, a lot of you already have submitted questions when you registered. So thank you for that. So we are going to give priority to those questions that we have already received, but please don't hold back from submitting questions in the chat. Just keep in mind, one, they may already be on Ashley's list to ask, and two, we're going to get through those questions that we've already received first. So if you have not attended Coffee Chat with us before, welcome. This is a great event for your first Coffee Chat because this is our biggest Coffee Chat that we have ever had. We have, I think, 275 people registered. So Lynn and Sam, you draw a big crowd. Our normal Coffee Chat schedule is what we'll do this morning. We'll have our program up front, and then we will transition into a time of networking with breakout rooms. And at that point, we would, of course, encourage you to, keep your camera on, unmute yourself so you can engage with other CalSega members in the chat. In the breakout rooms. But for this first part of the program this morning, again, if you've just come in, we do want everyone to keep their microphone off, but you are welcome to submit your questions in the chat. So my name is Kate Wallace. I am the Association Manager for CalSega. We are really excited that we are kicking off 2024 with a very well-registered event. So welcome to all of you. Thank you to Chief Jenston and Assistant Chief Sadowski for agreeing to answer all of our questions this morning. And thank you to she's got a lot of titles, guys, but I'm just going to throw out two. So CalSega Vice President, Ashley Cervantes Thomas, and also the chairwoman of the CalSega Ambassador Committee, which is the committee that's putting on this event. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley at this point.
Thanks so much, Kate, and thank you all for making this our most highly registered and most likely most highly attended. We'll find out here in just a few minutes once everyone signs in, but our most highly attended coffee chat as well. This topic is very timely, and this feels like a wonderful New Year's gift to all of us PPOs for our long-awaited updates to the powers to arrest and appropriate use of force. We're going to dive into that in just a moment, but first, I'd like to ask Kate and her amazing team member, Allie, to go ahead and launch our poll. So we always like to start these coffee chats off with a few quick poll questions just to get an idea and a sense for who's here and what sorts of things you're interested in hearing about. Although I think I know the answer today for most of us. It is kind of helpful for us to see what category do each of you fit in. So are you going to be the person delivering the new training material? Would you classify yourself as a human resources person for your company, a company owner, so you wear lots of different hats? Are you more on the operations side as a security manager or some other role? I always like to say I do all the jobs that our founder doesn't want to do. So there's that option as well. The other question we're going to ask you today is, what CalSega events have you attended recently? Specifically, I want to know, did you attend Coffee Chats Part 1 and 2? So our very first one was back in 2022 when AB 229 had first been passed into law, and I interviewed CalSega President David Chandler. And then in, five months ago. I think it was in July of this year. We had the privilege to speak with Chief Jensen and Assistant Chief Sadolski. So if you joined both of those, I'd love to hear that. We also had all of us, hopefully many of you here today, had the privilege of hearing them speak live at the CalSega annual conference. So I'm just kind of curious, have you attended all the things? Have you attended some of the things? Are you just reading our updates via email? Kind of want to get a sense for where everyone's at in terms of baseline knowledge. And then of course, what are you looking to get out of today's coffee chat? So I'll give everyone just a moment to go ahead and hopefully finish that poll while I have the honor to introduce our guests for today. As Kate mentioned, Chief Jensen is going to be going on 5 years with BSIS here in 2024, and we are so excited to have her on today. I know BSIS is in campaign mode out there, really focusing on pushing out this information. I know there's lots of as-is chapters that are looking to push the information out. And I know you guys over there at BSIS have been working very hard because I have a plethora of announcements that you all have pushed out, bulletins, and then of course these 90 and 144 page respective documents that I know were quite a bit of work. So without further ado, I am really excited to introduce Chief Jensen, and of course, I would be remiss if I did not also introduce Assistant Chief Sam Sadolski. It has been such a privilege getting to know these folks the last few years. They work very, very hard for our industry. And I know a lot of this got dumped on Chief Jensen within the first couple of months of her starting her role as Chief of BSIS back in 2019. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them. I know they have some opening announcements. They want to make sure we're all on the same page before we dive into the questions. As Kate mentioned, we are going to start with the pre-submitted questions, and then I will take as many of the questions that I already see popping up in the chat as we have time for as we go along. So on that note, I'll turn it over to you, Chief Jensen.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everybody. So Sam is going to start off with some general announcements. We can't resist the opportunity to inform you on a couple of other big changes while we have this big audience. So Sam, if you want to talk about that, and then after Sam talks, I'll go into the specifics of the regulations and the reason why we're here today.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to give you some updates on implementation stuff with it being a new year, a lot of new law changes. First thing with the baton permits, as all of you are aware, starting January 1st, applicants for a baton permit have to apply directly to the Bureau. If you go online right now, those applications are not there. With Breeze apps and getting the online app going, it usually takes them the first few weeks of the year to get everything configured. So they'll do, the testing and the back end of things to make sure everything works, and then once it goes live, they'll be doing some testing on the front end. So those apps should be available later this month, usually about the third week of the month we're anticipating. With the paper application, we've had a lot of back and forth with legal because legal has to approve those applications to be published online. And one of the things that we have new this year as well is the new, I don't know if it's requirements so much, but there's the temporary licensure for military spouses that has gone in. This has been a department-wide bill. So with that, a lot of information has to be added to these applications. And one of the things we've been trying to do over the years is balance how much information we put in the application, because we all know not everybody reads all the information. So we want to provide as much as we can, but we also don't want, stuff to get lost in there. So I'm anticipating having that paper app online, hopefully next week. I was shooting for this week, but we're also finishing sunset report. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We're also in the process of just doing updates in general. The qualified manager experience, that passed in the last bill. So that's effective January 1. So we've got to update the company applications. We're working on that. We're working on updating the website as well, so we can get more up-to-date information there. You know, all of this kind of has that trickle-down effect with all these changes. We have to go in and change a lot of areas. So we've got to update, you know, the firearm with the regs that Lynn's going to get into. We made some changes to the firearms training, so we've got to update those applications as well. So it's been a lot all at once. So we're a little behind on some of those updates, but we should have them out fairly quickly. And I think that's it for me, Lynn.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, like Sam said, whenever a law changes, it's a whole bunch of things that need to change too. So it's not just us updating our regulations. It has, you know, an ancillary effect on our applications, on, you know, what needs to be reviewed by legal, what needs to be uploaded by our IT team, and all of these things, because we are competing with the 36 other boards and bureaus under the DCA umbrella. All these things do unfortunately take time. And speaking of taking time, these regs certainly were a little bit of an epic undertaking. If everybody remembers, they were supposed to go into effect a year ago because everything was intertwined and we needed to update both manuals in accordance with the regs change. We pushed it back to July 1 of last year. And it's not July 1. I understand that that's probably what everybody is thinking. However, it took us 6 months to get them approved by legal and through the Office of Administrative Law. So the Office of Administrative Law approved these regs about a week, 2 weeks ago. And so hence that is why we are scrambling and we are finally live. There are still a few pieces missing. I believe, Sam, the exams are still waiting to be uploaded. And the answer keys we are waiting to send those out to the trainers, but we're as close as we're going to get at this point. So let's get into it. So number one, the legislature passed AB 229 in 2021. This was in reaction to Golden One venue in Sacramento, which is about 2 blocks away from the legislature. There was a trespasser early morning. Security went after him. They knelt on him, and unfortunately, he ended up passing away later on. When the police footage was released is when the legislature sat up and took notice, and then they introduced this bill as a result. One thing I do want to make clear, because we get this all the time, is once the legislature passes a bill, we cannot change it. We do not have the discretion to say, you know what, we're not going to implement the 50% in-person training, because we got a lot of complaints about that. We only got 2 complaints during the public comment period, but prior to that and during the entire iteration of you know, the regulation in the process, we received probably a good dozen complaints from folks saying, don't implement the online only portion or the in-person portion. We don't have the discretion to do that. If there is a bill or there is legislation that you object to, the time to weigh in is with the legislature, because once it's dumped on us, we do not have any leeway in implementing or not implementing certain things. So we are stuck with it. And so we created this with, and for purposes of today's meeting, there were several large points that I want to make. The changes in AB 229, as we all know, changed the reporting requirements. It tightened them up. So everybody, that went into effect almost 2 years ago, or I guess 2 years ago now. It also had an increased fine amount. It also, as I mentioned, had 50% in person. And the reason for the 50% in person is because during the discussions on AB 229, as it was working its way through the legislature, I had multiple discussions with staff and legislators who said, how on earth is somebody going to teach somebody how to do a restraint online? How do they show people how to, you know, use appropriate use of force if they're not in person, showing them this is the right way to do things, this is the wrong way to do things. That is the genesis of the half online, half in person. The legislature really wanted to see hands-on training for some of these things, and they felt that was very important. And the biggest change that we are looking at today is section 7583.7, which has a new section if you look in subsection 10 of that, and you guys don't need to look at this right now, but just for future reference, if you're ever wondering what exactly changed and what is new that you need to teach, look at 7583.7 subsection 10. That outlines all of the new subject matter that we have to train on. So I'll just list them very briefly here. We have to now train on legal standards of force, duty to intercede, the use of objectively reasonable force, supervisory responsibilities, use of force review and analysis, de-escalation and interpersonal communication training, including tactical methods that use time, distance, cover, and concealment to avoid escalating situations that lead to violence, implicit and explicit bias in cultural competency, skills, including de-escalation techniques to effectively, safely, and respectfully interact with people with disabilities or behavioral health issues, use of force scenario training, including simulations of low frequency, high risk situation and calls for service, shoot or don't shoot situations, and real-time force option decision-making, mental health policing, including bias and stigma, active shooter situations, and any other topic deemed appropriate by the Bureau, excluding weapons of mass destruction and terrorism awareness. And that is now an elective. So those were the 10 new subjects that we were tasked with creating regulations around and language around. So that is where we are at. That is what the law reads verbatim. And that is what we have spent the last 2 years crafting manuals and regulations to reflect the desire of the legislature. Okay, and that's all I have. That's the intro. So I'm ready to dive into questions.
Oh, no, that's it. We're done. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Lynn. That was a fantastic recap. I'm gonna do a little recap of my own just to kind of highlight some of the things that Lynn has already brought up and make sure that everybody listening in is on the same, we all have the same foundation to make sure as we start diving into these questions, we sort of have a baseline. So many of you had registered for our coffee chat that was originally scheduled back in December. I did actually re-listen to our last coffee chat with you, Lynn, and you had your magic crystal ball was very accurate. You had said either the 1st of October or the 1st of January. And here we are, the 1st of January, ready to dive in to all of this material. So I know it has been quite the process for you all. I know the Office of Administrative Law ended up being quite the journey for these manuals to get through. So I just want to say thank you for sticking it out. And thank you to everyone else. I know you all have had so many questions you've submitted to Kate and her staff with CalSega. And I know it's been a long time coming. So without further ado, here's that baseline I'm referring to. So essentially from AB 229 that passed in 2021, there was kind of 4 key takeaways that we sort of outlined at a high level. Number one, as Chief Jensen's already mentioned, the 50% in-person requirement. So essentially what we've done with the 8 hours that used to be 4 hours of powers to arrest and 4 hours of weapons of mass destruction is we've taken that and we've split it into powers to arrest and appropriate use of force with some modifications. So powers to arrest, instead of being the recommendation for it being 4 hours, we've kind of reduced it down to 3 hours. And then that list of new topics that Chief Jensen read off to us, which I dropped in the comments. If anyone wants to take a look at the new manual, it's absolutely beautiful. And on page 12, you can find the list of all of the new topics that are going to be covered. And then obviously they're listed in that section B of the manual, which section B starts on page 40 of the manual. So we've essentially taken that 8 hours from powers to arrest weapons of mass destruction. We've turned it into powers to arrest appropriate use of force. The other big takeaway from AB 229 was the practice rounds are now at the discretion of the instructor for firearms. So that 50 practice rounds is no longer a requirement. It's now at the discretion of the instructor. We won't spend too much time on the 144-page firearms manual here today. But I know for those of you that have questions, I'm sure the chief and assistant chief have some great recommendations if you need to follow up on questions for that. The 4th key takeaway, Just regarding the new topics, and this is actually my first question for you, Lynn. That last bullet point was any other topic deemed appropriate by the Bureau. Do we have any Easter eggs that we're going to find? Did you end up adding in any other additional smaller topics into this initial 8 hours?
No, we had our hands full with the original bill. So, but we put that language in there because what we wanted to do was we wanted to have the flexibility in the law to add best practices as they became available online. And as at least one person has pointed out in the chat, these topics came from Post. The legislature, and its infinite wisdom, decided to go to Post and get recommendations on how security guards could behave. Or should behave. And they based it on peace officers, which is completely inappropriate in my opinion. Security guards are not peace officers, but it is what it is. And so that's where the list of topics came from. But we insisted on having that one standalone provision that said, listen, as things become available and as we learn more, we want to have the flexibility without coming to the legislature again and again to change the law. We want to have the flexibility to add more things as possible. So that is what that language is for. And as of yet, we have not added anything. We have had our hands full with just the original language.
And we're just sprinkling in a sunset review now on top of that. I don't understand, Lynn. It's like you're busy or something.
I know it really has not. The first few years, this job was fun, and it has not been fun for some time now. So it has been hard work. Yeah.
Never ending. Well, we appreciate all that you do. So as I mentioned, that's sort of our baseline. The other thing I just want to sprinkle in now is we referenced AB 229's, I referenced it as like the little brother bill, AB 2515. Again, today we're not going to delve into that too much, but I do just want to take a quick second because I know it's already popped up in the chat comments regarding the new baton updates. And so everyone should have gotten, hopefully you all subscribe to the BSIS notifications, but there have been some really pertinent and timely updates regarding batons. Is there anything before we delve more into the questions that you want to mention on that topic, Chief, before we kind of move along from that?
Yeah, I'm going to kick it over to Sam. Sam's the new assistant chief of the Bureau, but before assistant chief, he was our chief of enforcement. We always get the like, hey, are you guys sending people out on January 2nd ready to write citations? No. Sam, do you want to talk to the timeline on enforcement for the new baton permit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna meet with enforcement staff this month and kind of have a good chat about the new regs. Obviously, I'm making all of them read the manuals as well. They need to get familiar with them, same as the industry. But, very similar to 2515, last year, we did a lot of outreach and education for proprietary. I mean, at that point, when you think about most proprietary security employers, they're not all as engaged as, security companies. They don't get together and talk shop and talk about new laws and stuff like that because a lot of them are all separate businesses. So a lot of it has been just doing outreach and education with them. And so same thing here with batons. The new process will apply directly to the Bureau. Right now, there's not any plans to overhaul the baton training. I definitely open to suggestions if people have, any suggestions on how it could be updated. But just like with 2515 and educating on proprietary, we're going to do the same thing with the new regs. As some of you might have noticed, there's no grandfather provisions in there to say that, okay, guards don't have to do this new training. I would highly recommend all of you to put your guards through this training as part of their CE because they're going to be held to the standards in this training. So if they didn't have this training, that's on them at this point because the enforcement provisions that were added in there specifically say that it would be a violation if they assaulted somebody or used force that was outside of oh crap, I don't have it in front of me, but 7587.1. If you look in there, it'll have in there. So guards will be held to those standards that's in this training. You know, as we go through sunset, maybe there'll be an area where we can weigh in and say that maybe we can mandate it at some point that everybody has to go through it, but there's nothing there now. But again, we'll work with educating the security companies, educating guards. That's the main goal that enforcement will have this year.
Thank you for that, Sam. I think that the grandfathered question has definitely popped up a few times. So just to clarify, for anyone in the state of California that currently has a baton permit, they will be required to renew every 2 years. And the memo, I think, did a pretty good job outlining, you know, how the timeline and everything is going to roll out for that. I think that covers batons in a nutshell. Of course, I think we could have a whole coffee chat probably just talking about all of the updates from AB 2515, but that is not what we're doing here today. So on that note, I'm going to try to have the questions sort of flow as much as possible like a natural conversation. Typically, I write the questions for the interviews for the coffee chats. However, we had so many questions come in that I did not write a single question. But what that kind of looks like is the questions sort of bounce around quite a bit. And then of course, we're still rolling in the live questions. And if we have time, we will tackle those as we go. So regarding the question that keeps popping up that feels the most appropriate at this time, now that we've covered batons, is can we talk a little bit more about the logistics for the 50%, non 50%? Is that spelled out in the manual? 50% in person, 50% can be taught via video, I think is what the language of the law says.
Yeah, we've outlined it in the course curriculum in the manual. It'll say next to the subject in person or online eligible.
Okay.
So it is outlined, and we do have. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I just wanted to add, all of you guys can go on to OAL's website, oal.ca.gov, and they have the California Code of Regulations up there. So you can go find BSIS. We're under Title 16, Division 7. You can go through and see the regs in its entirety and how the outline is in there if you want to see a clean final copy of what that outline looks like.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we are required to kind of to keep the track changes in our document that we posted on our website, and it's confusing. So go to the OAL website, look for BSIS under Title 16, what Division 7. Like Sam just said, it's so much better to read it that way. It's a lot more clear.
Okay, that's really helpful. Because yeah, when I was skimming through the manual that I downloaded, I didn't see anywhere where it specified eligible for in-person versus not. So
yeah, it's in a it's in the, and I don't have it.
It's outlined in the regulation. So the topics will say which ones are classroom, and which ones are, basically it'll just say which ones are mandated to be classroom.
yeah, so the Office of Administrative Law, somebody I saw just asked that question. That's what the OAL, and that's essentially the body that approves the final product that was signed into law and then got created at BSIS and then has to be approved by this separate entity. So that is very helpful. And Kate is going to work on getting that link in the chat for everyone. I see that question popping up. And Sam, I do recall it being written in, I saw it, I think, in that initial language. So that is good to know which portions are going to be eligible for in-person versus online of that 50% of that 8 hours. So to answer the question that I think this question is leaning towards is, do I get to pick which 50% is in person and which is not? The answer in short is no. So you will need to follow the regulations and do that in conjunction with the beautiful new manuals that we have. Another question is, will the other required hours eventually transition to the in-person training as well? Lynn, I'll let you take a stab at that.
Sorry, I don't understand the question. What was that again, Ashley?
Yeah, the question was written like this. It says, will the other required hours eventually transition to in-person training as
Oh, I
well?
see. Right. No, I don't see the law is, unless the law changes, the law is specific 50-50. So you'd need a law change. And I would assume CalSaga would push out the notification to you guys. And that's when you guys would run to legislature and say, don't do this or do it. I mean, if you're an in-person academy, you're like, yes. If you're an online academy, you're like, no.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question, the natural flowing order of curiosity, leads us to, so how long do we have to implement this? And the way that the question is written here is a two-part question. So I'll let you tackle however you want to respond to that, and then I'll ask part B.
Sam, you want to answer the enforcement question again? Very similar to the other one.
So, if you notice in the notice that we sent out, we use the term, we will provide adequate time for companies to get familiar with it, right?
Yeah.
Letter of the law says today, it's been there. We recognize this came in last minute, so we're going to provide some buffer time. I can't say a date. I can't give a certain amount of time because that would be an underground reg, and I don't want to go on the record and say the Bureau is not going to enforce the law. But understand our goal here initially is going to be education. Let's get everybody familiar with it. Let's transition over. We're not, seeking punitive anything at this point.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And Sam, while I have you live, can you also just state how to find, like, what's the best way to find that link again directly through OAL?
So if you go to their website, there'll be a button there that says California Code of Regulations. So just like if you want to look up the law, you go to the legislature's website and you can look at all state laws. OAL houses California Code of Regulations. So you click on California Code of Regulations. We're under Title 16, Division 7 for BSIS, and then all of our regs will be there. So you can actually open it up and see the final clean copy.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam. And then one quick follow-up for you, and then I'll take it back to Lynn. So as of the letter of the laws, the regulations are here. So theoretically today, but we don't have the final test for powers to arrest yet. And do we have, I don't know if we have a timeline on that yet either.
Yeah, so we're going to get that uploaded hopefully by the end of this week. Like I said, we've really inundated our internet team in the last couple of weeks. And of course, everything we send to them, we say, can we get this done as soon as possible? And they're like, dream on, we can't, do it. So the goal will be the end of this week, probably into next week. If it goes longer, we're going to upload the exams as a separate document for now. Those manuals, we still want to do some formatting and some tweaking, but the content we can't change because that's referenced in the regulation. So we do have the ability to go in and do some formatting. We want to clean it up, make it look a little better. And then at that point, probably add the exam back in because it got chopped off during the process. So like I said, that'll be uploaded as a separate document available for everybody. And the answer key, same as before, you email the training facilities email, or actually just follow the link that's on the website on who to contact.
Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful. And what can we expect from the test? Before, obviously, it was just the powers to arrest. Is it going to encompass appropriate use of force now as well? Like, how much has that test changed?
So what you'll want to do is you go through the training manual, look at those the practice questions.
Review questions. Okay.
Yeah, the review questions.
Got it.
I mean, keep in mind, powers to arrest training, the goal is they take the test with 100%. It's designed to be, there's no trick questions on there. You know what I mean? So it's meant for retention.
Yeah, and so just so everyone's on the same literal page, what we're discussing here, if you're looking at the new powers to arrest and appropriate use of force training manual on page 13, the exam information kind of goes over what the expectation around the exam is, and then in each subsection, what Sam is referring to is there's review questions. So like, for example, on page 90, section B, subsection 11 has like 4 or 5 sample questions from that section. So that's what Sam is referring to there. Speaking of those review questions, when do you anticipate we'll have answers for the review questions as well, Sam?
Well, I kind of think we're going to take those review questions and use them on the actual final exam. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
like I said, the idea is retention. So if they're looking at it as they go through it, they should be getting them on the test. So they should
Yep.
sync up with the final exam.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, I know this is a lot of questions around the test. There was quite a few questions that I'm trying to synthesize them here as best as possible so we don't have to come
Yeah,
back
no.
and talk about the test again. So again, on page 13, for folks listening in of that new training manual, page 13 right now, it specifies the general energy of the test is not changing. Like, so, and what I mean by that is the goal, they need to score 100%. Now you can't hand them the answer key, but it's still the same where like the instructor can have a conversation if they miss a few and then allow them to retake the test as many times as necessary. Is that correct, Sam?
Correct. I think the original goal of Powers to Arrest was meant to kind of be an open book test. I mean, that's the idea there is understanding and knowledge. There's no, minimum passing score actually codified like there is on firearms where they have to pass with a certain percentage.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you. And hopefully that'll be it for the test questions, at least for now. We'll see what live questions come in here in a few minutes. But going back to you, Chief Jensen. So how one of the questions was actually formatted was a little different than the question I posed. And I know Sam has actually referenced this before. So whoever wants to take this, I wanted to point it to you, Chief Jensen. But the question is, how long do we have to implement for existing guards? And so I want to give you the opportunity to sort of talk about what BSIS's perspective is on that.
Right. Yeah, I know this is a question we've gotten a lot. I'm going to kick it over to Sam, but I just want to do one quick remedial explanation for those of you who don't understand. Like me, I worked in the legislative world pretty much my entire career before I came over here. And legislation and regulations can be very confusing. Like, what's the difference? Like, what are they both laws? Like, I don't understand. So just very briefly, when the legislature or Congress passes a law that impacts a government agency in some way, if it is complicated enough, that government agency now has to draft regulations explaining in detail how they are going to implement that law. So that is the regulatory world. It's the government agencies. It's not the legislature. These regulations do have the force of law in that we can cite, we can fine, and we can take action based upon regulations. The difference between a law and a regulation, other than the government agencies implement regulations, is that we can change regulations. We don't have to wait for the legislature to act. So those are the big things. So regulations flow from legislation. So, and then they also, like, we can also do regulations on our own. For instance, like if we have an issue with having to raise or lower fees, we can take regulatory action on our own. We can draft our own regulations without waiting for the legislature to act. But just generally, those are the big differences there. So hopefully that helps people understand kind of the flow of where this comes from. But anyway, Sam, if you want to answer Ashley's question, please.
So the timeline for existing guards, right? So
Correct.
one of the things, so if you remember, and I know a lot of you do, I've seen some of the comments, there used to be grandfather provisions in for the training, guards licensed on or before, don't have to do this. That fell out. There's various bills that went through that grandfather provision left out, right? When I find a company that says, well, I've had this guy working for my company for 25 years, he did the old original training, and my first thought is that you never put him through any of the new training. Like, the idea of these trainings being updated is there's new knowledge, there's new standards, there's new, issues that need to be addressed. So my suggestion, this is what I'm telling everybody. You have that 8 hours of continuing education, put them through this new training. It allows you to have them up to date on stuff. We're not coming in, and saying, oh, you hired this person last year and, they don't have the new training. I mean, that's that's not the goal here. So use the next, you know, year or two as you're putting your guards through continuing ed, have them do this. Right now, there's not a mandate that existing guards have to take this training, but I mean, down the road, maybe. I mean, that's something I think during sunset, that's something I want to explore, because I really think all of our guards need to go through this. The other thing you guys noticed on proprietary, they used to have a reduced number of hours and a shorter training. And through the reg process, we struck that and said all proprietary needs to go through the same training, because the reality is, you know, various companies are going to have different use of force policies. There's companies that never use force. There's companies that have armed guards, and, you know, they're going to use force if they have to. So you never know the extent what a guard's knowledge base is going to be. So if everybody is on the same wavelength and the same training, hopefully you have uniform standards across the board, regardless of what company they work for, and regardless of whether or not they go, you know, from one company to another company. The idea is to at least establish this base standard for all licensees.
And I'll just jump in real quick here, and I'll tell you why you want to do that as a PPO, owner operator, QM, and whatever, is because when an incident happens, the first thing that occurs on our end is hopefully we get the incident report. Sometimes we don't. Hopefully we do. And then press comes knocking on our door. They send PRA requests, which is Public Records Act. They demand to see training records for everybody involved in the incident. And let me tell you, the press and reporters focus in very quickly on, okay, well, what are the standards? What should this person have been doing? You know, tell me, you know, what are industry best practices, and was this person following that? And then you're going to see a news article, you know, a TV station news report on how this guard and this company did not follow training standards. And that has happened at least a half dozen times since I've been chief. Is the press will go after training the very first thing. So it's in your best interest liability wise, and just for, you know, for good press and good practices, and to make sure that your house is clean, and you're doing the best you can to get all your guards on the continuing ed path, and get them caught up to speed with the new training.
And just so you guys are aware, for your peace of mind, when we receive your incident reports, it initiates a complaint automatically on our end, because our staff, you know, look into those complaints. The other reason about that complaint is because that provides us an exemption under the PRA that we don't turn those incident reports over to the press. They're part of a bureau investigation. So your documents that you submit, those are kept confidential to the extent that we can. The only time they can become subject to public disclosure would be if we were initiating discipline with the AG's office and something went formal, they could be subject to discovery. But, you know, just be aware, we do keep those confidential.
Thank you. That was a great synopsis. I think there's a lot of moving parts. So I want to just kind of recap this for everyone, because the question popped up in multiple different ways. But ultimately, do employers need to teach appropriate use of force in a classroom setting for their current security officers? The letter of the law, the way that it is written, is no. However, it is best recommendation. And I think, Sam, you brought up a great point regarding the grandfathered language that has kind of fallen away over the last few revisions and things that have been updated in the legislative updates, as well as the regulatory updates, which, thank you, Lynn, that explanation. I even wrote that down. That was a really clear, concise way to understand the difference between the two. So again, best practice, we need to do those 8 hours of continuing education anyways. So to answer the way that question specifically was written, would that need to be done in person? I think the best recommendation would be to teach it in the same fashion that it has been legislated, that it needs to be taught, which is the 50% in person, and the 50% you have some flexibility with, in accordance with the way it's spelled out on that Office of Administrative Law, OAL, link that I think Kate was able to get into the chat. Okay, so because I am just so excited about this manual, I have a few questions that I know can be found in the manual. So I'm going to try to tag on those, and then we can sort of do it here live together. Remember, there's this link. I dropped it in the chat for everybody. If you haven't printed it out and highlighted and sticky note it like I have, don't worry, there's still time. So you can follow along on the online version as well. So the first question that popped up regarding the manual specifically is, will appropriate use of force be essentially 1B on the syllabus? So feel free to correct me if I get this wrong, but my understanding of how this is sort of broken out is there's 2 parts, and part B begins on page 40 with the appropriate use of force. Did I get that correct? Like, this is a pop quiz.
Oh God, I don't know. I haven't. I will tell you, Ashley, we wrote those manuals 2 years ago. I mean, and we finished them like we started 2 years ago, and we finished them about 6 or 7 months ago. So I couldn't tell you
In a nutshell,
exactly
though,
what
it's
page. Yeah,
basically 2 parts.
I'm gonna
right?
say yes. I'm just gonna go ahead and say yes because
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah,
you're talking about. You sound
one
like
of
you
the
know
things
what you're talking
we didn't, so the timing, right? 5 hours appropriate use of force, 3 hours powers to arrest.
Yes.
We didn't change a lot of the powers to arrest stuff so much because we all know that the powers to arrest training can be done in less than the 4 hours that it was there. So we left that content there and just
Okay.
added appropriate use of force.
Okay, that's actually very helpful, and that was my next question, Sam. So thank you for being on top of it. So in a nutshell, and what I noticed as well, the part A, for anybody who's trying to follow along, the part A is more or less the same from the powers to arrest that you've seen before. Not a whole lot of changes in the powers to arrest section, which was previously recommended to be 4 hours, but like Sam mentioned, we all know that it did not take 4 hours to teach that powers to arrest. So now the recommendation for powers to arrest is 3 hours with not a whole lot of changes. And then the remaining 5 hours is that part B, use of force. Did I get that correct? I think this is a pop quiz for me,
Correct.
guys. Okay, fantastic. So the next question sort of related to the manual is, are we required to use the BSIS manual verbatim to create the training courses?
Which one?
I'll go out on a limb here. I did not write this question, and assume we can reference the powers to arrest and appropriate use of force, since that's the main meat and potatoes we're talking about here today, Sam.
So, I mean, you're supposed to train in accordance with that manual, right? You as the employer should add to it. Feel free to, the goal on that is, here's some base knowledge, base expectations for security guards. You guys should be expanding based off of your needs. Like I said, some companies have a use of force policy, some companies don't. You need to train your staff in the manner that you want them on post. So, use the BSIS training manual as that base standard. Everything that's in there that's relevant, and if there's, appropriate use of force talks about certain takedown or holding or any kind of techniques that are in there, you could be like, sure, these techniques exist, but you don't use them when you work for me, or you only use this type, or you only do this when you work for me. That would be expectations for your staff.
Yeah, and I think just as an example, if anyone listening in is very tactile like I am, if you want to skip to page 72, again, we're in the powers to arrest and appropriate use of force manual. And if you skip to page 72, it's a good example. So section 8 says skills including de-escalation techniques to interact with people with disabilities or behavioral health issues. And there's about 8 pages worth of content. So for me, if I'm going to deliver this, I think I'm a slideshow person. I'm pretty tactile. I'd probably develop a slideshow that covers and encompasses all of the information in these 8 pages. And then I'd probably have a handout to go along with it. Compared with section 9, use of force is only 3 pages, including the review questions. So I'll probably expand that. So whereas, for me, section 8 in my PowerPoint is probably going to be like 8 or 9, maybe 10 slides. Use of force is also probably going to be 8 or 9 slides for me. But it's only 3 pages in the manual. So I'm sharing that as a very tactile example. Sam, does that sound sort of in line with what you're recommending?
Absolutely, because the idea is for you guys to expand on some of those topics.
And I will say that it's important to remember that the manual is the floor for training. It's not the ceiling. Okay. Don't undercut the standards in the manual. Like those are the base standards. You can add to it, but you cannot subtract from them.
That's a great quote, right? You can add to it, but you cannot subtract from it. I am probably going to make a sticky note that says that for myself, because I'm a sticky note person, if anyone could tell. You all are seeing a lot about me today and how I operate. So, okay, last, we're sort of transitioning out of the manual related questions, but the question is written this way. It says, can comparable California Post training courses be substituted for similar / equivalent topics? And I know I don't want you guys to feel like you're beating a dead horse here. So I understand that the answer is the legislation has provided the minimum required topics. And again, we can expand on that. So if folks out there, you want to go to Post and kind of look at some of those training topics and add to it, you're going to obviously, if you're providing the full 40, you're going to want to make sure that everything's in alignment with the requirements for the elective training topics, and then you can add to that. But this is something that actually came up for me personally, so I'm going to tweak that question just a bit with my initial response. Hopefully I was in the right ballpark there. But the thing that came up for me recently was regarding the ongoing 8 hours. And I have been in my role for 13 years now, and I have always made sure the 8 hours actually flow directly from the initial 8 and then the additional elective options. I've never qualified my officers when I provide them the ongoing 8-hour refreshers with anything else. So we provide optional trainings, but I've always told them it didn't count towards their initial or their ongoing 8 hours of continuing education. And I was recently schooled by a phenomenal training instructor who said, actually, you have a lot more options than that to count towards the initial 8. So I'm going to tweak that question and just have Sam or Lynn, whoever wants to chime in on that, talk a little bit about the continuing education and how you foresee, obviously for this first year, the recommendation is that we use the new use of force as the continuing education right now for officers, best recommendation. But going past that, what is your sort of recommendation or your thoughts around continuing education and what you would like that to look like?
So the regulations, the continuing education and the section in the regulations that apply to that, it is a really cool, I think, it's a really cool tool, because we have, if you look at the regulations themselves, and I'm not going to be able to pull this up in time, but it'll go into, it has a whole list of things that you could potentially teach for continuing education, and it can be tailored towards your specific type of business, a security business that you have. So, I mean, Sam can add more to that, but it's fairly open, and I think its CE is just based towards the needs. I don't know that every year for your CE you need to redo the powers to arrest and use of force. I mean, I don't know. Sam, what do you think?
So no, like I was saying, you have the options, and it's designed to be that way because, not all, and this is what we recognize, not all security guards serve the same function. Lynn and I were on a call yesterday with the potential licensee, and I gave him the definition of what a security guard does. And I said, that's a broad world. You never know you want to go. So you have that flexibility in there. And if you look at, so I'm pulling up the regs now just to see what the language says for continuing education. To provide additional remedial instruction in private security subject matter to meet the annual continuing education requirement pursuant to sections blah, blah, blah. Annual training shall be 8 hours and must include a minimum of 2 hours of review of the appropriate use of force topics as set forth in 1B of the appendix. Mandatory and elective courses shall be used to meet the remaining annual training hours. So that's where you get that. So 2 hours of that 8 hours annual needs to be on appropriate use of force topics, right? You have 5 hours worth of training in that manual. So you can, pick which topics you want to do the refresher on. And then the remaining mandatory and elective courses shall be used to meet the remaining. So, the rest of the 6 hours can be anything out of the mandatory or electives in the training.
Sam, where can that language be found one more time?
So this
So
is, yeah,
I'm looking
section,
at the new reg. So I'm on OAL's website. I'm looking at section 643. And it's the last item at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
and it's also, if you like just do a Google search online from, like Sam said, it's Article 9, Section 643, skills training courses, and it goes into mandatory and electives, and it's a really good just read through for a
Okay.
refresher for everybody, because it does explain what it is, the maximum number of training on per subject on electives and refreshers, and other stuff. It's really cool, like the wide variety of electives that you can have your folks take.
Yeah, my good friend Conrad Lavoit actually sent that to me recently as my brain was like emoji. It was great. Okay, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. How we typically run the coffee chats is we do an hour worth of questions and then we transition to breakout time. Chief Jensen and Assistant Chief Sadolski, I want to be most respectful of your time. I do have like 2 more questions that I feel like are pretty pertinent. Do you guys have another maybe 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is one of our main goals for the next few months, is to educate everybody. So I'm happy to be here until, and I'm happy to be here for as long as it takes to answer questions.
Awesome. Okay, well then we're going to keep going. Kate, you cut me off when we're out of time. So the next question is, are there new or different requirements for the certificate of completion that must be issued for powers to arrest / appropriate use of force?
You mean the regs on issuing the certificates?
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding. I mean, once they finish it, they're going to get a certificate of completion.
Right, but there's certain requirements of what needs to be in there, and I don't think.
Oh, I see. You mean the hours outlined?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret the question. I didn't write the question, but yeah.
I don't think we made changes to the certificate. I mean, if anything, you probably want to update the title of the training. Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
to
no,
add use of force.
We did update it. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, we did? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's section 628. Yeah, just talked about the training. I wouldn't worry about the certificate so much as just change the name of the training that you did.
Okay, so that's
the powers to arrest and appropriate use of force. Weapons of mass destruction is now an elective. And we'll be sure to keep those awesome, cool videos on the website, because I know people love that training.
I mean, I just watch them when I have downtime. What's Netflix? I don't know. I just go to BSIS. Okay. The effective date of the new regulations is 11/30/2023. I don't know where this person referenced that. Will we need to retroactively certify security personnel? So like if I've issued a guard card since November 30th, would I need to make sure that those folks have this training?
Yeah, I'll have Sam answer that one, because that's more of an enforcement kind of thing.
So the reason that date was 11/30, so just so you guys are aware, OAL has certain quarters in which regs can be made effective, right? July 1, October 1, January 1. Normally, as you go through that process, they'll make it the next effective date. Our legal, when they sent the package over, had a request for an effective immediately. So Lynn and I were hoping, first might make that October 1 deadline, but we didn't. So when the regs went over and OAL accepted them and filed them with Secretary of State, it was like, boom, they're effective 11/30. And we were like, oh crap, we still got to get, the rest of the stuff.
Manuals, yeah.
So, the question, if the guard, after 11/30, look, the exams aren't even online right now. So I don't have an expectation that you guys have to, retroactively be held accountable. What I will suggest is if you did put a guard, last month, put him through the old powers to arrest training, you might want to put him through this one, or at least give them this information, because like I said, they're going to be held to these standards and not the old standards.
Got it. I think that's a great synopsis for a very complex question. And then I'll just share, I'm comfortable to share with everyone here, my company's plan is every person that is hired for the next year is automatically going to get the 2 hours for the equivalent of the 8-hour continuing education or refresher. So that's at a minimum where we're going to start. Now we're not a training facility, so ours is going to look a little different than obviously, training facilities and how you guys decide to proceed. But I think that was a great synopsis, Sam. Thank you. Next question, and this has come up a lot recently. And I think we addressed it, I want to say it was either in person at the annual conference, Lynn, or maybe it was the last coffee chat. They're all blurring together now. But the question is, what are the qualifications for the trainer/instructor? Do you need to be a certification is how the question's written. But I think what they meant is like, does the trainer need to be certified in some way? And if so, where do we find those requirements?
So yeah, in order to train, there's 2 ways, and Sam, jump in, because at this point I feel like I want to make sure that I'm answering the question correctly. But what you want to do is we approve trainers. So you apply to be a trainer, or and applying to be a trainer is on our website. Apply now, click on that, and you'll see trainers. It is a very manual process. You send in your qualifications. When we get packages in the mail for people who want to be in application packages, it's usually about this thick, and they include, the application process. We'll walk you through that on our website. However, if you have an employee, right, Sam, and this is where I start to get shaky, is in-house, you can train as well on powers to arrest and use of force, right?
So we have 2 different approved trainer. There's approved trainer guard and approved trainer proprietary. And you would need, either one. But if you are a PPO, you can train your own employees. So, that's something, we're not doing a separate certification for whoever does the training. Right now, firearms instructor can provide the trainings, baton instructor can provide these trainings, the PPO can provide them. The approved trainer, it's very basic authority that we have to approve any institution, organization, or whatever to offer training. And that's where you get a lot of community colleges that have a guard card course, or, there's some nonprofits, there's all kinds of different ones that get that approved trainer. So because that approved trainer isn't really a separate license, that's where we ask for qualifications whenever they want to become an approved trainer, because we don't know them. They're not a licensee, right? Years ago, they had proprietary apply for, if you are a PSE and you have PSOs, sure, you can train your own staff, but they were having them also apply for that approved trainer status. And part of that, I think, was because PSEs, they're not as known to us, right? There's no background check. There's no qualifications that they have to go through in order to qualify for a PSE. It's just a registration. So, yeah, you can train your own staff, or you can be an approved trainer, but there's no certain separate certification process for it.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, and on the BSIS website, I see the training instructor for baton, training instructor for firearms. So you can apply for those. Or if you're a PPO or a PSC, essentially a proprietary employer, essentially who within those organizations is qualified to train new prospective officers?
Anybody that you designate at that point. They're like I said, there's not a separate requirement for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am a PPO and I can designate my, in theory, receptionist, provide her the training manual, and she can then train my officers.
If you are comfortable with her level of experience in training, and if you are comfortable with her potentially being faced with BSIS auditors coming in saying, show me everything that you do. I mean, if that, so the PPO will be on the hook if the training is done incorrectly.
Perfect.
And I do think the licensee has to sign off on the training certificate. So if I remember right.
Right. That
That's the receptionist signing off on it. It would need to be the license holder.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, Sam. Okay.
Like Sam said, though, keep in mind, it honestly, it sounds bad for us to say that. Sure, you could designate somebody to do it, but the reality is, you're the company, you're the employer, it's your liability.
Yeah, yeah. That's exactly the answer we needed to have, right? The facts
Right.
and the harsh reality of, and here's what happens if.
Right. Yeah, because again, and I can't emphasize this enough because there have been several high profile shootings by guards in the last several years. Let me tell you the press and I get, you know, you got like, I get it. They are relentless. They will come to us and one reporter will have, well, one paper will have 3 reporters on this one particular story. One reporter will go after the training angle. One reporter will go after the PPO. One reporter will go after, let's see what other sort of disciplinary history they have. So as long as you are comfortable with potentially an incident and a magnifying glass being put on your system of training in your PPO, that is why we say you can designate, the PPOs can designate an assigned trainer. Because you are on the hook. You will be fined, you will be, you know, disciplined if anything is done wrong. So make sure you pick a good one.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what everybody needs to hear today. So in that same vein, one of the questions that we received was, how do we go about ensuring that our training is approved by BSIS?
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Which training?
I think
so we don't, if you guys want to do a training course, like we don't approve that. Like that's not something we're involved in. So if you guys want to set up PowerShare REST, that's what the manual is for. This is the base expectation from the Bureau for training. You need to at least have the knowledge of that manual imparted in every one of your guards. How you do that is up to you, but that is what our enforcement folks look for when they go in.
I'm so glad you said that because I forgot to make my sticky note earlier and I just made it. This is the floor, not the ceiling. I wrote it backwards because I'm trying to multitask over here. I'll rewrite that later. But this is the floor, not the ceiling. And I suspected that's where you would go with that. Now I will share, I've been audited a few times by BSIS and
Or welcome.
Yes, actually I will. Thank you truly, because it really has made us better at what we do. And so we have our binders of our training records from every training that we provided to an officer. And again, I'm a PPO. I don't actually, we don't train people from off the street and issue guard cards. We just do the ongoing 8 hours, but we've built, because of those audits, our training records are really solid. So like we have like the PowerPoint, the roster of who have attended, like with the instructor's notes and all of those different pieces. And it really has made us better at what we do. But what the auditors that have come out and viewed that have said is, yeah, that's exactly what we want to see. And no, we don't approve this in advance, right? But it's nice to see. And the line of questioning, you know, to the receptionist point, right? Like if I have my receptionist do a training that the PPO is actually going to sign off on, I would feel confident to say, like, this is what she presented. These were her notes. This is how I prepared her to provide that training. And so that's just sort of how we address it here at my company. So I think that's very helpful. The next question.
Can I really quickly hop in? Because I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I want to clarify, Sam, you said that the certificates need to be signed, and that is not my understanding. Can you clarify? It just needs to list the name of the trainer on the certificate. Is that correct?
Hold on, double checking.
Okay. Because we had a lot of questions that popped up in the chat when you said that.
So section 628, a licensee or approved training school which administers a training examination shall retain the examination results on Bureau approved answer sheets for a period not less than 2 years or until audited by the Bureau, whichever occurs first. A licensee or training facility shall certify under penalty of perjury on the employee's application for registration that they successfully completed the training. You're right. I don't think the signature is required on the training certificate. I probably misspoke there.
Okay, because I want to make sure, because that is our CalSega's position as well. So I want to make sure that we are advising our members correctly and that our database is creating certificates correctly. So just to reiterate that, the certificates in the database that you create, they don't have a place for you to sign them. They do have the required field for the trainer's name. And we will be updating the certificate in our database. So, and Lynn and Sam, let me clarify this with you. So right now, of course, we have 1A, powers to arrest, 1B, weapons of mass destruction. So is it correct that I update things on our end to say 1A, powers to arrest, 1B, appropriate use of force? That's the new name.
Yes.
Okay. And then is there a Roman numeral for weapons of mass destruction, 3AA?
Well, weapons of mass destruction has been removed from the initial. It's no longer required.
But is
Yeah.
it an elective?
It is
It's
an elective.
yeah.
It's just like any other regular elective now.
What's its Roman numeral?
Oh, I don't know. I don't, would have to go and look at the list of electives.
Okay, but it will
Might have
be,
just listed it at the end of what's already on there. I'd have to go look.
Yeah.
I think we're at Z.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Um,
don't take that. I mean, I don't know exactly how we're going to list it yet, but
Okay.
yeah, that's, we
Okay.
have a lot of
We'll wait
courses.
for clarification on that, but to those of you who are asking in the chat, we will get our database updated to reflect the new course names for the new course name for 1B. Oh, Ashley, sorry, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Kate. So if anyone has had a chance, or maybe Lynn or Sam, if you know or can quickly find it, one of the questions we got a lot of was around specifically for powers to arrest, teaching it as is. Can that still all be taught online? Do you know if that was specified at all in the updates? Now, I know we sent the link to the OAL version. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet.
We wrote those regs so long ago, I can't recall off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to look.
I am.
Ashley, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the question, I'll read it exactly as it's written. Are we still able to offer our power to arrest course online as is? Ours is 4 hours, but the law only requires 3. So I assume so, and that it's not required to be in person.
So you'd have to look at the outline and see which topics are required to be classroom and which ones are allowed to be online. Because I know a lot of people put together some elaborate virtual training during COVID. So that was one of the things I think the legislature took into account as well. So look at the topics and the breakdowns in there and see. I mean, if you have some of those same topics and the content's the same that's available online, then you should be good to go.
Okay, and I just found it. I didn't think I'd be able to find it this fast, but you're right. This is much easier to read. So I did just find it, and it does look like I'll copy and paste what I'm seeing here. Oh no, I won't. It's too long. But it does it does not specify that any of the powers to arrest needs to be in person from what I'm reading. However, anybody that's following along, under section B, appropriate use of force, like option new training topic number 2, the use of objectively reasonable force, it says in parentheses in person. So I think that's how we are to read that.
Correct.
Perfect. All right, we are finally transitioning to the live questions. So that was our last pre-submitted question that we're gonna tackle today. So transitioning to the live questions that have been asked. The first one that I got was, for the update on QM, if we applied prior to 1/1/24 with old requirements, are we going through the process before the change? I assume this is related not to AB 229.
No, this is AB 1244. So yeah, that goes into effect January 1. If you apply prior to January 1, the old qualifications apply.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. We got a lot of repeat questions, so I'm going to try to skip through those. I know we touched on this. I want to just clarify because it did come in and I don't know at what point it came in as a live question. It says, speaking of grandfathered, is it mandatory for all security officers, regardless of when they acquired their guard card, to complete the 32 hours of skills training, 16 mandatory and 16 elective? Specifically, is there any grandfathered exception for those who earned their guard cards decades ago?
No, like Sam said, all the grandfathering clauses fell out over the we've had a lot of bills passed on us by the legislature in the last 5 years. Somewhere along the lines, one of the bills overwrote the grandfathering clause. I can't remember which one it was, but there is no grandfathering in anymore.
Okay, so as a specific example, if I have an officer who's now been with me for 9 years, and when I initially hired him, he was eligible for the grandfathering. He's
Right.
done his 8 hours of continuing education every year with me the last 9 years, but never had his initial 40. Best recommendation now would be for me to either give him that back 32 or take the 8 from every year. Like how would you recommend?
I would give them the 32 because at the end of the day, with BSIS audit, that's what they're going to look for. We want to make sure they have that full, 40 hours of training.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, as the employer, you'll never get dinged for too much training, right? And it's better for you to have it than to not have it.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm going to transition to some more baton questions. There was quite a few. I think we answered most of the pre-submitted ones. So on the live live questions regarding batons, the first one is, baton instructors still need to submit training roster upon completion of training within 7 days.
No.
No.
Okay. The baton permits are now like a firearms permit. The training facility does not keep rosters. You don't do anything like that. The individual is responsible for their own baton permit. So
and that's live now.
Well, effective January 1, but if you did training in December and stuff, still submit all those rosters because they'll licensing will still process.
Yeah, as up if you have a roster and you have done training up until December 31st, 2023, so just up until last week, continue to submit them, but as of January 1, no.
Okay. Got it. I'm taking notes too because I think that's important, although I'm not a baton instructor. For the record.
I have a question in regards to that.
Go ahead, Manny.
Hello.
Yeah, we got you loud and clear.
So when would the new baton, so we should start, when would we be starting to process the new batons, and how would that process work?
So it's similar. It's hey Manny, how are you? So it's a very similar it's a very similar process to what we described earlier for implementation process for what we described earlier for the new training. for use of force and powers to arrest. Although it is effective January 1, we're not out there with our citation pens and paper and looking to cite people. So there is a ramp up to implementation. But baton permits, we sent out multiple notices. I'm sure you got them, Manny. This is how it's going to happen. If your original baton permit was issued in an even number year, you're going to renew it in an even number year. If it was issued in an odd number year, you're going to renew it in an odd number year. So, yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
And since I didn't get to introduce Manny at the beginning, I do have an incredible team of Ambassador Committee members who help make all of the wheels go round for this coffee chat. Manny sits on the board for Cal Sega, and he also is part of my amazing team of ambassadors. I don't know, there's way too many participants for me to shout out everyone else who is here, but I will just say I have a fantastic team of Ambassador Committee members. And if anyone is interested in joining the Ambassador Committee, we are accepting new committee members. So minus that quick commercial, let's dive back into it. I am aiming to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. We are getting through most of the questions, and we're tackling multiple questions at one time. So we are making great progress. So my goal will be to wrap us up in the next 5 minutes. So the next question, just in line with the baton permits, and I just want to make sure as a recap that I understood everything correctly. The question is, for training facilities that have baton classes scheduled before the baton application was released, but just to be clear, it is released now. So as of January 1, they go forward with the new process. Am I understanding that correctly?
So yes, you go forward with the new process. However, Sam said at the beginning of the coffee chat, if you it seemed like a lifetime ago, but the baton applications, initial and renewal, are still waiting to be uploaded into our website. Legal weighs in on everything. This is another interesting fact that you guys probably don't know, and I'll just speak a couple of seconds about this. Is legal has to review every single application that we do. We get questions from time to time saying, well, why don't you ask this on the application? Why are you asking for this? Every single question and every bit of information we ask for on any application, and this applies to all government agencies, has to be reviewed and approved by legal. And we have to have a statute or regulation to tie that to. Why are we asking for this? Because AB 229 says we must ask for this. Why are you asking for this? Well, section 643 of our regs asks for this. So our application process isn't a simple thing. It is a months-long, exhaustive, multi-level review. So next time you look at an application for anything on a state website, take a minute to appreciate everything that went into that, because it is insanely complicated. And I was not prepared for that when I came into this side of government. So it's taking a while.
Okay, so that makes sense. And I appreciate that. I'm a very contextual person, so that helps me personally a lot. So if I am a training facility and I have a baton class scheduled for tomorrow, then the best practice would be to use the old method until the applications are up, or tell my students you just have to wait to actually apply.
Well, at this point, you can provide the training, and what's going to happen is you're going to give them a training certificate or proof of completion that they've done the training, and then they submit their application.
Yeah, so the facilities aren't on the hook waiting for this. It's the applicant. So the baton training facilities can still train as usual. They just don't submit the rosters. Everything is on the student, just like a firearms training facility. The student then needs to follow up with us once we get those applications online, which should be any day now, honestly.
But I will say, so on the application itself, the instructor will sign off that they've done the training. So if you're doing a training class this week and we still don't have this application available online, go forward with the training, but you will need to sign off for them.
Yeah, sorry, that's right. They do need the signer.
Okay, no, that makes
sense. And also I say this too every time I give a speech. If you are a student and you've taken a training course from anybody, make sure before you leave with that final class with that certificate in hand that all the information is correct. We have tons of trainers who put the wrong date, and guess what? We can't change that. So if you're an applicant and you have a certificate that is messed up by your trainer, we don't care. It is a messed up certificate, and we will not approve it. So that is sort of like, you know, where we are, because we don't have the authority to say, oh, you made a mistake, cool, submit, you know, we're going to say, if you guys made a mistake, you need to go back and submit a new certificate. So always, always, always make sure that when you have a training certificate, you look at it and you make sure everything is accurate.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I know we're getting a bunch more questions in the chat. That was the last live one that I had submitted for us to discuss today. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have about 2 minutes left. Kate, was there any others that were submitted live that you want to forward over, or are we gonna call it now?
Sorry, you guys are sending me direct messages. There's too many of you and only one of me. I got lost on the questions from the chat. So I do just want to clarify though on batons. So existing baton permit holders can continue to carry until the new registration process is available.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's gonna happen is they'll get a renewal notice in the mail letting them know when it's time to renew.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
at that
just-
point, they'll
it's-
need to go do 8 hours of training, and then they can do their renewal.
And since the baton is tied to their guard card, as long as their guard information is up to date with BSIS in terms of like address and everything, then they will get that notification.
Yeah.
Correct.
Uh-huh. But
And also
keep in mind, we get hundreds of returned pieces of mail every single day
Yeah.
because our licensees are terrible about keeping their addresses updated with us. Hundreds, like 300 a day, returned mail, pieces of mail every day, all day, every day.
Yeah, well, that's what we're gonna do, is remind our employees to ensure that their address is up to date for those. that
Because
carry-
if your address is wrong and we send you that and you
Yeah.
don't get it, and then you say, oh, shoot, you know what? I forgot to renew my address with you. Can you send me that? Okay, that'll be $50 for a replacement license. Well, no, that'll be $50 for a replacement license, or 25 or whatever we charge. So
Yeah, and
that's the downside, is we consider it a replacement license and we will charge you accordingly.
and the update to update their address is all done online.
Online, yeah. And if the easiest way to do it is set up your own Breeze account and do it that way. There's also a name change form online that you can fill out. You cannot email us and say, hey, change my address. Nope, that's not how it works. According to the law, we must have it in one of two forms. Either you do it on Breeze yourself, or I'm not sure if it's two forms, but the ways to do it, easiest way to do it is create your own Breeze account. You're in charge of the information on Breeze, change it that way, or do a name change form that we have on our website.
Perfect.
Name change, address change.
All right, on that note,
One thing I wanted to add to on batons, if you guys go look at the new provisions, it used to be you can only sync it to a guard card. That was changed with the legislation. Now it's structured like a firearm where you can sync it to your QM, your PPO, if you're a partner or sole proprietor. So those options have expanded as well.
oh, that was one of the questions I think I just saw in the chat that popped up, Sam. So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Kate, and Kate will let us know what we have time for and how we want to wrap up. But before I do that, I just want to take a moment and say a sincere thank you to both Lynn and Sam. Your time is very precious, and as we heard, you have many moving parts. Now that you're finally wrapping this up, you're getting hit with the sunset review, which I'm sure that'll be a whole nother coffee chat at some point in the future. We can talk and educate everyone about what a lovely process that is for you all to undergo in 2024. But sincerely, thank you. I know that you worked very hard. Even if I didn't know that, I could just look at these manuals and tell that you worked very hard to make these come to fruition. And we sincerely appreciate all of your efforts for literally making our communities safer for everyone here and all of the people that we love and work so hard to make sure that they are safe and secure. On that note, I also just quickly want to I already thanked my ambassador committee. I want to thank all of you for listening in. I can safely say I can see the participants numbers. So this is our most highest attended coffee chat thus far. So thank you all for making that happen. And a giant thank you to Kate and her amazing team, especially Allie, who make all of the behind the scenes logistics for these coffee chats and everything else that makes CalSega such a great organization. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Kate, the mic is all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all of you for being here. Thank you again, Lynn and Sam. I do want to give us the opportunity for networking, since that is part of Coffee Chat. If you can't stay, we understand, but I am going to go ahead and open up breakout rooms in just a couple minutes. So it'll give you the option to move yourself over, or in about 30 seconds, it will automatically move you over. So this is just your time to network with your industry peers. Maybe you have a question that didn't get answered during the coffee chat and you want to ask your peers. Go for that, make some connections. Thank you all for being here. The Californian is going to come out at the beginning of next month, and that will have a lot more information for you. So thank you so much. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your membership. We appreciate you being here today.